Hey, Dr. Paul here. I work with a massage therapist, a body worker, who specializes in pediatrics. And so she has a client who happens to have a very unusual presentation of a rare condition. The condition is called CRANIOSYNOSTOSIS. We'll explain a lot more, but I thought we'd go in and meet this little one, get the story, and then you're going to get some follow-up, because this is a situation that also ends up requiring surgery that hasn't happened yet. So let's go see. Hello, hello. A surprise
what
here.
Are you doing?
Dee. Well,
oh no, I have to check my hair and makeup.
You look fine.
I wasn't ready.
You look just fine. Okay, you're feeding a baby. What a surprise.
I know.
Okay, so this little one, I can see just from a distance here that the right side of the forehead is that way a little bit relative to the left side. And maybe the skull is a little bit wide across there. If you actually take a look from the front, you can also see that just a little lopsided. And of course the back, which, hey buddy, how you doing? How you doing? It's good to see you. Can you see me upside down? How do I look?
Yeah.
There's a little smile. Here's a little smile.
Can you tell him you're my buddy?
Yeah, you guys are buddies. So if you look at the head from back here, you can kind of, I don't know, if you can't really see in this position, but maybe you can lift up just a little bit. There you go. So you get to see that flatness, pretty significant flatness of the skull. So maybe we'll talk a little bit about the flatness of the skull first, just before we even get into what the condition is here, because flat skulls are extremely common. And I would say back in the days when I was in practice, we would see flatness, maybe not quite this severe, but some degree of flatness, because babies' skulls are not solid. They're not fixed. They have what are called sutures. I'll use this little skull here to demonstrate. Now, there is a mitopic suture that's already closed in most babies pretty early that goes right there. Then this is the coronal suture, and you can see the different colors there. It's where the bones connect, but they're not fused when that baby's first born. And then this is the, let's see, that's the coronal. No, I said that was coronal. Now I'm getting confused on my sutures. Lambdoidal is this one back here. And, oh, this is sagittal. Come on. This is taking me way back to medical school. So that was a long time ago for this old guy. That's the sagittal. That's the coronal. This is the lambdoidal. If you get early closure of, let's say, this suture here, the skull can only grow like that. If you get early closure of this one, it can only grow like that. So you can get very misshapen heads. And if you get early closure of the lambdoidal, then you're also going to, especially if it's on one side, you get a distorted kind of, only one side is growing. So the head becomes very asymmetric or lopsided. So that's, if the sutures are involved, that's craniosynostosis. That suture is closing prematurely. Enough on that. I wanted to talk about flat heads. Imagine putting this baby on their back, and you've got constant pressure on the back of the skull. And what happens is you get flattening here, and that's much like what we're seeing here. I mean, you will often see this, it's a normal thing. And I would say, just thinking back to my pediatric days, I remember seeing a lot of flat heads, like every other baby. Because we are now teaching parents to put babies on a firm surface on their backs, and that's what ends up happening. That skull is soft and it's pliable. So I have reassured thousands of babies, parents, about the fact that that flat head is normal. Now, the Academy of Pediatrics has pretty much banned all pillows, but there is the ability to have a non-dangerous pillow that would take the pressure off the head. So if you imagine that skull, that baby, with that head now somewhat supported, and as long as their neck isn't tilted so much that they can't breathe, there shouldn't be a problem with that. So here's an example, and you can see that removes that pressure from that firm surface constantly pushing on that head, and also prevents the fact that if we don't have that, that head's going to have a natural tendency to generally switch to one side or the other, which is one of the ways that bodywork really helps, actually. So I should ask you, Dee, what's your experience with flat heads and how bodywork can make a difference?
Well, and the first thing when you showed, so this little guy's been coming to me for a while. So the tension was so strong on one side that, like you said, if there's not something under there, especially on a firm surface, whatever's tense will pull, and that's what'll cause the flattening on one side more than the other. So with the pillow, for like in his case, because he used the pillow, correct? Yeah. That helps to support that. So everything around here now is soft. So the head can expand as it needs to. So 99% of the babies that I get, and I get them really young because that's the best way to make a difference, we suggest softer, the pillow sometimes. There's all kinds of things that parents can do to help, and then the body work helps with getting the tension to release, and there's so many conditions that infants have and stress, and like this little guy is a one of a two. He is a twin. And so that's part of, with twins, one of them will generally have more tension, a little flatter head, a little bigger. It's like a battle in there for a lot of things.
Battle for space.
Yeah. So this little guy had that back, like you were talking, the back of the head was affected even from the very beginning. It is better than it was, and the tension's better, but what we noticed is it wasn't fully changing. And that's why there was a suggestion to do a scan to find out if what was going on, which is what you're talking about. And this is the first case that I've ever had that the body work may have helped with tension and a lot of things, but it's not going to change the fact of something fusing early.
Right. So we're talking there about that craniosynostosis where the suture, and in this case it's one of those back sutures.
The lambdoid?
The lambdoid, and only on one side, and a little bit onto the suture here between the temporal bone and the parietal bones. And that suture has a name that I don't remember. But anyway, so you've got fusion on one side and like this, and it caused the mastoid bone on one side to be a little more protruding, a little larger on one side than the other. So that was a clue, because that shouldn't be different. And that also slightly explains the lack of symmetry. In other words, the two sides not being exactly the same. But talk about rare craniosynostosis, because parents,
I'm going to show him this way too.
okay. Hey, hi there. How you doing? Parents who have babies who have flat heads or even lopsided heads usually get all worried. Well, what if something's wrong? What if it's craniosynostosis? You know what, if you've done your online search. And we got smiles going on over here. Big smiles, yes. Well, what if it could be craniosynostosis? Do we need to go get a CT scan? Because that's how you screen for it. And I remember in practice back in the day, I would probably... I don't know, 1 in 500, 1 in 1,000, I would end up going, yeah, let's go ahead and get a scan. It'll probably be normal, and almost always was normal. And his was one of those situations. I didn't make the recommendation. I'm not in practice, but got to interact with the family and go, yeah, it makes sense. Go ahead and get the scan, and you never know. And we'll show you that scan, de-identified, of course. And lo and behold, they found a lambdoidal, that back suture, on only one side was fused. Craniosynostosis. What are the odds of that? Well, craniosynostosis, period, happens in about 1 in 2,000, 1 in 2,500. And that particular one-sided lambdoidal would be a tiny fraction of that 1 in 2,000. So I've never seen it. And it's one of those situations where you're just glad you looked. So most of you watching will have babies with flat heads, and you don't need to worry. But we wanted to show you a case where sometimes it's worth to, hey, you're squeezing my thumbs, aren't you? You are. You're squeezing my thumbs. You're doing so good.
Well, and what I realized that I want to point out is that there was curvature, and a lot of times when there's curvature and that affects tension, that'll affect the flat head. There's like this process.
Body work?
Well, he was very curved in the beginning in his spine. And it's very different now. Both sides are much more equal in his spine. The curvature's not there, and the tension's getting better, yet the head shape's not changing. So that was kind of a,
What you looking at?
And what I've known, and most of the providers and pediatricians that I work with have always said, it'll change on its own. One of the things that parents have a choice to do is to put a helmet on the kiddo, if you can talk about that. A lot of times they'll do that, but what I've found is if we correct everything, then the head will grow and shape and be normal on its own. Once they start crawling and moving.
That's a really good point. So for let's just say that craniosynostosis is 1 in 2,000. So for the 1,999 kids who have misshaped heads but don't have craniosynostosis, what do? Should you put them all in a helmet? And the interesting thing is, absolutely not.
That's your opinion.
Well, yeah, my opinion. And of course, I'm not a doctor and I'm not diagnosing or treating. But let's just put it this way. Most of those situations will normalize, get better on their own. But what we found with body work is it helps quickly. So you get these kids who have these flattened heads just because they've been laying on their flat heads for a long time. That's right. And that pressure on the head can be relieved by what Dee Dee was talking about, reducing the tension. So if you're looking at their baby and they're laying on their tummy, and one side of the spine muscles, right, going up and down here is more tense than the other, well, it's pulling and causing the head to be more looking one side or the other. Yeah, you want to get involved in this conversation? You think so? You do? Are you looking forward to surgery? No. The surgery ends up looking a little bit, yeah, we don't want to talk about that. We don't want to talk about that. We won't talk about that. The recovery will be fine. You're going to be just fine. And you have amazing parents too. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Are you happy because I'm talking to you, or because Dee Dee's giving you some good body work? I don't know. Probably both. Probably both. Yeah? Yeah? How many months old are we now?
6.
6 months? This is perfect, that beginning of vocalizations for language. What? Are you falling forward too far? Yeah? We got you. You're going to be okay. Oh, I missed it. I got a fishy. Just when I had you. Just when I had you. Oh, there we go. There we go.
I'm hearing some noise in his breathing through his nose. Is there anything to discuss there?
Oh, he might be slightly congested or teething a little bit. Yeah. But he can keep the bottle in while he's, if he was so congested that his nose was unable to move enough oxygen, then he'd be pushing that bottle out and gasping for air. So that's a clue actually for parents when your child is sick with a cold or a cough, or they're breathing hard, or if they can nurse if they're breastfeeding, or take a bottle if they're bottle feeding, and not have to keep pulling off and gasping for air, then they're not that sick, right? Their oxygenation is adequate if you can maintain a latch. And we're even talking here. We call these vocalizations are like a baby's first way of communicating. It's their way of talking. It's kind of cool.
And that's the part that didn't change. I think that's the thing that working, and the tension got better, all the little things got better. So yeah, that, me as a therapist, that makes me think, okay, there maybe is something going on, and it's good to check.
Yeah, and that bony prominence is not there on this other side. So you look behind that ear and there isn't that big old lump there. Come around to the other side.
Is that why it's called partial?
Well, yes. Coming around to this side, you see this big old bump right there.
What's he doing to your
Right there.
What's he doing to your face?
There you go. So that's the mastoid bone that's just much larger than you would expect at that age, and that's because it fused. And I wonder sometimes, when you look up craniosynostosis and the why of it all, they don't know. They have syndromes listed, and this little one doesn't have a syndrome. He just had early fusion of one bone area. And so one can only speculate that being stuck as a twin, and maybe those bones were jammed together in such a way that the bones felt like, if you have a fracture, so if you have a broken bone, how does it heal? It lays down new bone to try to heal. And so that prominence that we're seeing on that mastoid bone almost certainly has to be the laying down of new bone. And that probably got stimulated because of being jammed, is all I can hypothesize. Well, there you have it, folks. this is a fascinating case of craniosynostosis, a very rare condition. To have it just on one side like that in that area of the bone, it's hard to pick up, which is why we wanted to do this video. You just don't see that. Most pediatricians have never seen that. I had never seen it. And it's diagnosed with a CT scan. They use a very low radiation amount for looking at craniosynostosis. So I know a lot of parents, as these parents were, actually concerned about the radiation, and it's not so much that you need to worry, especially if you can pick up something that can be fixed. And you'll see in a follow-up video the post-op. So what happens after surgery, and we'll describe at that time what the surgery is like. Yes, we will. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Thanks for watching. I'm Dr. Paul. So if you'd like coaching with Dr. Paul or with Dee Dee, feel free to visit us at kidsfirstforever.com, the number 4, and we'll have a link in the description. Thanks for watching.